The same old spirit forces and the same old minds will perpetuate the same old system. Although ways and means of maintaining the old system may change, it will be the same old system still as long as the same old minds and the same old spirits prevail with their white magic, pale evil nature, because the same old system is the nature of them. Their time is up. It's black magic's time. It's God time. The spiritual forces of good are on our side, just call them. A change in mental status by right knowledge, wisdom, and the overstanding brings change in spiritual status, because right knowledge destroys ignorance in the mind. Then the spirit forces of ignorance that maintain ignorance have nothing to subsist on and they die, dissipate, or become sealed in the earth, Hades, their form of hell. However, when the mind receives right knowledge and accepts it, the mind defends itself by fighting against the forces of ignorance, its enemy. When the right side of the mind defeats the weaker side, the person becomes free and equal and male and female, as sufficient effort is made. He becomes free of the devil's rule, regains his manhood. His godlyhood comes next. He no longer has to suppress the female of his own race to feel he rules. The results of cruel suppression of the mind and the accumulation of gross ignorance are the state of miserable condition where the slave and slave master, captive and captor prey to the same god of white magic, which lead our people to drink and take drugs, and brought them to a low state and feeling about self. Since the slave master is an enemy of the slave, if the slave prays to the same god of white magic, white miracle as the master, he is praying to the god that enabled the slave master to enslave the captive, and that god is the enemy of the slave or captive just as the slave master. The one God doctrine that the slave master indoctrinated the slave with is false and a trick to keep the slave from recognizing any other spiritual power but that of the slave master. You can't have a 1 without its percentage 99% of 1, the whole. However, also needs 1% of 2 in order to seal it, amount or worth. So you can't have a 1 God without a of and a toward. As the total number 1 must total up to 1 from percentages, and to be 1, it has to have a purpose that is becoming 2. So in fact, you can't have a 1 without a percent and 2. There are many God forces but only one supreme being, a Manubi Rita or Autumn Re for this new cycle in physical form, a human being who is supreme in knowing, or almighty, all-knowing deity in flesh, and that being is grown by nature itself, who has innumerable powers and parts. The one supreme being. Then there is the source, nature, the all-moving, creating, and working within all. Every person, every place, and everything is in the all, the source, finite and infinite, visible and invisible in the all. The powers and forces of Nuwapu are liberation for woolly-haired people everywhere. Liberation for Nuwapians is mental and physical separation from adverse forces, and their form of salvation in death, yet they say you get life eternal. When you die, think life eternal. After you die, you're dead, the end of life. Nuwapians' forces of nature are keeping adverse forces away from woolly-haired people after they have been liberated. Therefore, breaking the spell only comes after liberation and is the maintenance and perpetuation of liberty, justice, equality, and the right way of life, Nuwapu. This scroll helps to open the prison gate that has the minds of Nuwapians locked in, and as the gate of mental confinement opens, ignorance will flee and right knowledge, wisdom, and overstanding will become the keeper of the Nuwapian minds. Right knowledge, wisdom, and overstanding are Nuwapu, and Nuwapu is the spiritual science of all woolly-haired people throughout the universes. These scrolls are not the science Nuwapu itself, but the diligent reading and diligent study and profound overstanding of these scrolls will open the mind, tear down barriers, and qualify the mind for the universal science called Nuwapu in the ancient Egyptian order. The new buns, come from Nuba, a country in southern Ta-Nehisi, Zeti Sudan, a word which means 2 blacks, which included Ethiopia, originally called Aksum, Uganda, and Pwanet, Kenya. They are the original 9 ether woolly-haired beings, or Dreadman descendants of the Anunnaki of the 2 seeds, the Watusi giant and Dinig little people. In the Nubuns language, Nuba is said to mean gold. This is in reference to the gold that was put under their feet in Africa. This gold can be traced also in their Bible Genesis 2:12, where it says in that and the gold in that land was good. The word being used is Aramaic, Hebrew zahab, not nub. There are many different words for gold in the dialects of Utnapishtim's Noah Sea. They are Bazar, Ka Roots, Ka Tham, Sagur, Faz and Zahab. As you can see, the word nub is not one of them. The white man kill anything and anybody for gold. The word nub or Nui WB is the root word of Nabi, Nubians, or Nuwapians. It means color inclining to black, in reference to the Nubuns, the kinky, woolly-haired people, the Watusi Dang, giants in the earth, Genesis 6:4, whose head dress was their hairstyle, and it became the Egyptian Presh, and the Tar Dinik, whose headdress was the Numuz of the Akir, lion. When you look up the language of Nuba, or Nubia, which was called Ta Seti, you will see that it takes you back to a kind of the Wawat Kushite dialect, called Aramic, Syriac, Amharic, Yez, which also includes the Hamites, the Putites, and the Mizraimites, descendants of Noah, who is Khufu in Egypt, and his sons, according to their Bible and Quran. It's no coincidence that the scripts of these ancient Phoenician dialects use the same script as the ancient Egyptian Heretic and Demotic, being they originated in Egypt and moved eastward, pre-dynastic period. That is before the 46 dynastic rulers who were influenced from the Sumerians, who were taught by the Anunnaki, who brought the headdress, the hijab to Egypt, the same as worn by Baal, the Canaanite lord, who was Narmer. The original Nubuns migrated from the Persian Gulf up into Sumer and set up 7 kingdoms: 1, Tilmun; 2, Salam; 3, Mu; 4, Lemuria; 5, Kodesh; 6, Nippur; 7, Ashkelon, Alkebulan. Some stayed, while others migrated west to Egypt and set up 7 more kingdoms: 1, Sippar; 2, Kish; 3, Kutha; 4, Shuruppak; 5, Uruk; 6, Ishin, and 7, Eridu. Kish is the same as Cush or Cush of Bible Genesis 10:6, and you also find Cush in the Bible long before the Cush of Noah's time, Genesis 2:13. Ta Seti, Kish became Cush in the Bible, Genesis 2:13, 10:26. These biblical stories come from Egypt. After Utnapishtim of your Gilgamesh epics, who is Noah, Khufu of your Bible's time, Phut took over the land originally called Teknu, now called Libya, called Ta Seti. Cush took over Aksum, now called Ethiops or Ethiopia, and Zeti, original name of Ta-Nehisi, today Sudan, and Miriam took over Tama-Re, also Ta-Meri, called by the Hyksos Mizrair or Mizraim, which was named after Menes, Adapa, Enoch or Baal, and even Adonia. Menes, or Manes, demigods, Nebti. His throne name was man called Mazar in Egyptian hieroglyphs, but the Greeks called that land Egypt Egypticus, after the son of Belus, king of Phoenicia, naming it after the burnt faces of the shepherd kings, those Canaanites, from as far as Turkey through Palestine, who ruled Tama-Re for 430 years, and tried to destroy all traces of the original people of that best part of the planet Earth in those days. The Heka-Kasud Hyksos skin became bruised by the ultraviolet rays of the Tamarine sun, thus the term Egyptos, burnt faces. And the Arabs call it miser. This term never applied to the original inhabitants of that land, nor did Kemet, a derivative from the ancient Egyptian Kam, Kami. In Hebrew it became Kam, borrowed in the Bible to end up as ham, burnt or black and hot. They also migrated over here to America and settled in what was then known as the Land of the Frogs, named after the original Kamenu Ogdoads, who moved between the 2 pillars of Heracles, Hercules son of Zeus and Hera, and set up the ancient city Atlantis on this newfound land, and they became known as the Olmecs. The Olmecs are the original woolly-haired, dark olive-toned people, who originally came from Nuba of South and Central Africa. They walked over to America before the continental drift. The name Olmec was given to them by their children, the Aztecs, many years after they migrated to America. The word Olmec means people of the rubber land. However, their original name was Nubuns, from the word Nuewb, nub. These Nubuns, or Nubas, walked or traveled westward from their own land in search of other land and resources. After intentional seed mixing and gene tampering by integration intentionally done by the albino race and their subraces of 6 and 7 ether beings, we find the ancient Nubuns today all over the world as Nubians. Many have lost their pure kingly crown and their hair texture ranges from 7, 8, and 9 ether in an imperfect, unpure form today. There will be a change and reverse in the genes, past the year 2000 when the god seed shall raise again. The Nubuns came over to a place that was once called the Land of Frogs, and they called the place in their Kushite language Utla, which means to go somewhere for vacation. Utla became Utlan, making it dual, and it signified North America, and beneath that was South America, and Plato the Greek historian added the Tis, and you get Atlantis. They were the Dogon of Mali, Africa. They traveled a long distance. The word Dogon is from Dugao, which means high mountain. Dugaoan means the people of the high mountains. The Dogon live and are buried in the high mountains of present-day Mali. The Dogon culture is dominated by the number 8. They originated from the region of Kamenu Hermopolis, which means height, the Ogdoad. The Dogon's open-sided buildings with 8 wooden posts supporting a root of dried millet stalks are reminiscent of ancient Egyptian buildings. The pillars are frequently carved into figures representing the 8 Dogon ancestors, 4 male and 4 female, representing the primordial state of the universe. This same exact symbolism is found in ancient Egypt, where 4 couples are engendered by the original nature of the universe, prior to breaking up. These pairs in ancient Egypt were called the Kemenyu-Ogdod. The number 8 is also the basis of the Dogon's numerical system. Tahuti, in ancient Egypt, was the master of the city of 8, Kemenyu. According to their traditional history, ancestors of the Dogon migrated to the area, which they now inhabit around the 10th century. The Dogon, like ancient Egyptians, practiced identifying with ancestral spirits. They have similarities such as the significance of the serpent. The jackal netter of the Dogon pantheon is the guardian of the pond where the dead are supposed to be cleansed. Anubu was assigned for the 12th and 13th nomes of Upper Egypt, which are on both sides of the Nile at Asu. Signs of the zodiac in Dogon cosmogony are based on the star Septet Sirius, as was the case in the Egyptian calendar, which was based on the heliacal rising of that star. The term Mali means where the ruler lives, was applied to the new Mandingo state created by Sundiata's Kedah clan. The Kushites, Hamites, Mizraimites, Shemites, Putites are descendants of the Nubuns. Many of these tribes migrated as recently as just after the so-called Flood of Noah, or Famine of Khufu, called by some the Great Earthquake. They set up their own great empires when they came to Mesoamerica, and some stayed in the east. The Putites settled in Libya, the Mizraimites settled in Egypt, the Kushites settled in Ethiopia, and the Hamites, Sudan. Now in the 4th century came some Chinese, descendants of the Taros, a tribe of beings from the caverns in the earth, who were looking for more land. Shen, of the Shang dynasty, who were mixed, to the shores of America during an exploration. In 459 AD, these Mongoloid Chinese came into California and bumped into the Negroid Olmecs, and they lived and mixed amongst each other, and produced what became known as Native Americans. The Olmecians gave them the lower land, South America to the Yucatan, which became known as Amexem, which came from the word Hexian, which is just another name for Shushen, Hoshen. The name Mexico comes from the word Amexem, and the word Texas comes from the word Mexico. The northern region of the Olmecs became Atlan. All of their children were allowed to mix in with the Olmecs. The first offspring was the Hopis, who were giving a rule not to mix their seed. It's much like the one Abraham, whose wife and sister by the same father was Sarah, had in Genesis 28:1, 28-6, where he was commanded not to mix his seed with the Canaanites, because the Olmecs knew that the Hopis' genes were regressive. The Hindus, East Indians, the Asiatic black people, heard about these people, and they came across the Bering Strait and mixed in with Native Americans that moved north, called the Eskimos, who are Mongolians or Mongoloid. The word Mongoloid is a compound of the Greek word Mongoland, meaning shape or form. According to the American Heritage Dictionary, the word Mongolian means Mongolian adjective 1. Of or relating to Mongolia, the Mongols, or their language or culture. 2. Also Mongolian. Offensive. Of or relating to Down syndrome. Mongolian and 1. A native or inhabitant of Mongolia. 2. A member of the Mongol people. The East Indians bred with these Eskimos and bred tribes like the Seminole of today called American Indians. The Nez Perce nose-piercing tribe heard of the secrets from the ancient Ashuric doctrine, which came to Atlantis from Ganawa, Egypt, and they started wearing the nose ring, and were labeled Nez Perce, meaning nose-piercing. Various tribes broke away and started producing on their own, creating the Mayans and the Aztecs. Apep, Papi or Apophis, which means giant serpent, was the adversary of Re. Apap as Narfire was also a Ra or from Nur light, or as the Torah and Quran puts it, he was an angel of light who became the guardian of fire, Lucifer. Uriel, the great Wat priest, will again be prepared by Autumn Re as Tahuti as in Old Weret Karnak to read from the book of overthrowing Apophis to break his spell and reveal his hidden names to put out his amber fire, a text of the time of the Ramesses, Ra-Moses, dynasty, 19th of the 46th dynasty, starting with Ramses I, Seti I, Ramesses Li, Merneptah, Amen-Meses, Seti Li, Siptah, Queen Tuzrit, Setnacht, Ramses 52, Ramses IV, Ramses V, Ramses VI, Ramses VII, Ramses VIII, Ramses LX, Ramses X, and Ramses XI. Now, that time has come, the 6,000-year rule of Apophis is over, the one who spat out of our gene with a curse, the destroyed one, the snake Ouroboros with its tail in its mouth. He is Nikas, the serpent of your Bible, Genesis 3:1, Shaitan of your Quran, Quran 2:36, who were already there before the creator of your Adam and Eve. Well, he let go of his tail and his time is up. The great sun Re is shining bright out of the darkness of our past. Bring us the key to break the evil spell. You will open up to new words that will open your closed centers, which are reconstructed tones that will impart a different meaning and interpretation for you, as opposed to the opposer, Apophis. only one race on this planet is destructive to all others by nature, having mixed their cursed seed with every other race, infecting them with the demon seed. Only one, the cursed seed of Canaanites, Bible, Genesis 10:16-18, that is the Sidonites, Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadite, Zemarites, Hamathite, the brotherhood of light, fire and chaos, the illuminated ones, Illuminati, coming out of the mountains of Boazkoi along the Aegean Sea, out of the caves and underground caverns of Turkey as Hittites, a tribe of Canaanites. Their oldest city above ground was Akatal Hoyok. They spread their evils, war, hate, corruption, drug, lust all over the world. It all started from a little white lie about light versus darkness. After the Hyksos, Hyk equals captives, of kings, Sos equals shepherd, invaded Egypt by sneaking in like a snake over a series of decades, and around 2000 BC they ruled the Egyptians close to the Mediterranean Sea for 430 years. The true meaning of Hyksos is in question by modem historians. Some say Hyk pronounced Hyk means king and others say Hyk pronounced Hyk means captive. All agree on Sos meaning shepherds, as the Hebrew could not be kings in Egypt. There is no Egyptian word for king. There is Ur, ruler, not Hyken, being they were in bondage or servitude. The true meaning is captive shepherds. So the Canaanites of Greek mixture could not enter Egypt. History calls these evil invaders the Hyksos. They are also called Behemoth, beast of the field, land of Canaan pa Heka Kasut the Hyksos, or Hykau Koswet. The Hyksos ruled Hut Ward of Vans for 430 years, and this devil seed was cast out of old Egypt, by ruler Kamos, elder son of Sekener of the 17th dynasty, whose younger brother was Amosai, and then by the successor Amos son of Abana of the 18th dynasty of the 46 dynasties. Note the Hebrew names of the Hyksos rulers from the 15th and 16th dynasty, starts with Sheshi, Mayaber, Yakubher, Yaakobher, or Jacobher, Anather, Mercer, Apepi, Aser, Apepili, Akner, and Yakobam, that is Jacobam, as Jacob, Genesis 25:21-26. Jacob son of Isaac and Rebekah, is the Hebrew or Israelite seed. So the Hyksos are the Israelites, Isis Ra-El, seed of Abraham, Abra Kemet. Gabriel Gebrael. They are masters of tricknology and deception, but actual facts beat out faith and belief. This is what they would like you to believe, trust and have faith in, but just looking at the line of the Hyksos rulers, you see 7 to 8 names, each living to a right old age, which would give you more than one generation of 100 years. At least 4 generations is necessary for that many individuals to reign, and I'm taking into consideration that all of them may not have a full life of over 80 years, may have been murdered or replaced, so the 7 names listed, as it appears Apepi and Apepi was succession, and the last ruler Apepi Apophis lived to die of old age. This is how we calculate the 430. In fact, Turin Canon says 108 years, Eusebius says 250 years, Africanus says 284 years, Josephus says 511 years. As you can see, the 430, which is the fact, is trapped within their assumptions. Joseph would be Apepi, Apophis. As a Hyksos demon, he was proudly named Apepi Apophis, Joseph ben Jacob, Joseph to add on, defeated in 1585 BC, worshipper of Suchuk Set, Baal. This Apophis or Poppy, which means giant serpent, some call white Syrians. These evil human beasts called Hyksos started a feud with the indigenous people of the land. Poppy wanted them to kill and destroy all the holy hippopotamus, which was a symbol of the deity Tauret or Taure, which the Greeks call Tharus. The word hippopotamus means sea horse, the shape of all of Africa, the horse head. The Hyksos were known as the Asiatics, Phoenicians, Canaanites, Syrians. They were also called Arabs, because of Arabia, which is in the east. In pharaonic times, Asia would have been known as the northern countries, namely Palestine and Syria. This is why it is said the Hyksos appeared to have suddenly appeared out of the north, as a conquering army. The Hyksos came in through Turkey, and eased their way into the military, working their way into power, killing the pharaohs, and tying into the genes of the ancient Egyptians, thus taking over Egypt. An invasion was not necessary. Their intention was to come into Egypt and wreak havoc. The Hyksos were also called the Nomad group. They remained throughout Egyptian history as Asiatics, and their kings were called foreign rulers or princes of retinue. The Hyksos is noted for having a Syrian chief, who helped them overrun Egypt. They took control of Avaris, which is called Tel el-Daba today. The pharaoh Kamos helped inaugurate Egypt. However, he speaks of the Asiatics as having destroyed Egypt, due to the complaint of Apepi to Sekener Tau, the Ephrati pharaoh of Nuwapu Thebes, that he was unable to sleep in Avaris because of the roaring of the hippopotamus 400 miles away at Nuwapu Thebes. This created a war, and the Theban dynasty rose up against the Hyksos in a series of battles which eventually drove out the Hyksos out of Egypt. Genesis 10:2 explains how Noah's son Japheth had a son Javan who was called Ionian, which means Greece, so the Hebrew was also the Greek, and both were Hekakasut Hyksos.